everybody, to Grace, and as everyone knows, I'm Roger, and I'm just going to be sort of leading worship today, but I will not be preaching, which might be a great thing for many people, who knows. But with that, we're going to go ahead and start by having you rise for our opening song.
Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Faith will grow in grace. Lord helps us in grace. Gifts we share and will worship Him. Our faith will grow in grace. Savior's word leads us to find sanctuary, peace of mind. His warmth and joy will fill the space. Our faith will grow in grace. Hope will grow in grace. Where the Lord helps us in grace. Our doubts and fears will go out and years. Our hope will grow in grace. Savior's word leads us to find sanctuary, peace of mind. His warmth and joy will fill the space. Our faith will grow in grace. Hope will grow in grace as we rejoice to find our place. The gifts of man and God's great plan. Our hope will grow in grace. Savior's word leads us to find sanctuary, peace of mind. His warmth and joy will fill the space. Our faith will grow in grace. Our faith will grow in grace. Where the Lord helps us in grace. The gifts so dear as we worship Him. Our faith will grow in grace. The gifts so dear as we worship Him. Our faith will grow in grace.
Beautiful, you may be seated. I love starting this service with that song. It's one of my favorite songs here at Grace. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about the future of our church. It seems important that we talk about the importance of grace in our lives. So next song we do is called How Great Is Our God. The splendor of the deep, clothed in majesty, let all the earth rejoice, let all the earth rejoice. He wraps himself in light.
Let us continue with the opening prayer. O God, your mercy delights in us, and the world longs for your loving care. Hear the cries of everyone in need, and turn our hearts to love our neighbors with the love of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen. We continue with, I think, one of the nicest and greatest things that our church ever adopted, which is the praise moments, where we see actually God working in not only our lives, but also our community and others. So at this time, if anybody has any grace moments to offer, please let me know. Anita?
I have two. Number one, I'm so excited to have an old friend back with us. Yay! It's a smile to my heart. And new friends with us also. Sherry and Jeff and Pat and Donna. Thank you all for the new friends that are here also. But second is the community food pantry. I am so proud that we've been able to keep it going and that it has done so well. We're finding up to over 100 people coming. We get lots of food from the food bank, and there's lots of support from people in our community, not just our church. And I'm just thrilled that it is up and running and we're able to serve people in need in our community.
I'm going to add into that. I mean, when Donna decided to retire from the position, many of us were sort of lost of where do we go, who's going to lead us. And Anita, thank you ever so much. And Paulette for stepping up to continue it. And I think it's wonderful when we enter an unknown and we just watch it continue as if nothing ever happened. It's just a smooth transition. And I think, when we grow older, we're hoping that the younger people will continue on the path that we continued for others years ago. And so I have the hope that things will continue when God's in charge of it, and we just follow.
I prefer not to be doing it when I'm 99.
You're right, we're already there. So when we get old, you jump on that bus.
I'm just going to leave it alone. Are there any other praise moments? Yeah.
I have one.
Yes, Janet.
I just was really blessed this morning as I came into church and we started singing the songs. They're just beautiful. And I just am so grateful for the music people. Thanks.
I have one.
Yes.
Since you spoke about young people, I'm going to talk about my son who, at the beginning of last week, was ready to fire his boss and quit his job. And mind you, he has 2 children and a stay-at-home mom right now, wife. And on Friday, I called him. I let everything cool down. And he told me that he learned to cool down for a couple of days and then talk to his boss. And I said, "Well, I'm really proud of you." And he goes, "Well, guess where I got it from, Mom?" And I said, "Me?" He goes, "No." He says, "Do you remember everything that happened? Our dad got stage 4, 3 months to live cancer, then 13 months later you had a tumor in your stomach and all that, and you still took us to church, and we were crying so hard one day and we didn't know why. You didn't want to tell us, but you kept taking us to church." He goes, "Guess what I learned in church? How to hold my anger and calm down." So when you think your kids are just a total train wreck, they're not. And the church did that for us. Did that for him. So he and his boss worked it out. He got 2 awards Thursday, the day before I called him. My son did for his job. And I am so grateful for that church we were attending at the time. They did so much for us during a rough time.
Slow down. Slow down. And I think if we had leaders who would pay attention, I think we'd have an awfully nicer place than we have now. Thank you so much for that. It says a lot to all of us, really. I saw somebody over here.
Oh,
Oh, Paula.
I was just going to add to the food pantry.
That's actually the highlight of my week, is Thursday and Friday being at the food pantry, packing food and handing it to families. And actually, we may have over 100 people showing up, but the fact is, we're feeding at least 400. And I want to comment, Sun Street Center has sent 2 people every Thursday and Friday to help us, because, you know, there's a heavy load. We have to unload the truck. And so I praise them for continuing to help us and that we're there to give the food out.
Thank you. Okay. Let us continue with the reading of our lessons.
Good morning. I love being here on Sunday. This is like the best beginning of my week, is to be with my church family and to just be here and listen to music. So, the first reading is from Amos. This is what the Lord God showed me. The Lord was standing beside a wall built with a plumb line. I know what a plumb line is. I am very proud of that. With a plumb line in his hand. And the Lord said to me, Amos, what do you see? And I said, a plumb line. Then the Lord said, see, I am setting a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will never again pass them by. The high places of Isaac shall be made desolate, and the sanctuaries of Israel shall be laid waste. And I will rise against the house of Jeroboam with the sword. Then Amaziah the priest of Bethel sent to King Jeroboam of Israel, saying, Amos has conspired against you in the very center of the house of Israel. The land is not able to bear all his words. For thus Amos has said, Jeroboam shall die by the sword, and Israel must go into exile away from the land. And Amaziah said to Amos, O seer, go, flee away to the land of Judah, earn your bread there, and prophesy there. But never again prophesy at Bethel, for it is a king's sanctuary, and it is the temple of the kingdom. Then Amos answered Amaziah, I am no prophet, nor prophet's son, but I am a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore trees. And the Lord took me from the following flock, and the Lord said to me, go, prophesy to my people Israel. Now therefore hear the word of the Lord. You say, do not prophesy against Israel, and do not preach against the house of Isaac. Therefore thus says the Lord, your wife shall become a prostitute in the city, and your sons and your daughters shall fall by the sword, and your land shall be parceled out by the line. You yourself shall die in an unclean land, and Israel shall surely go into exile away from its land. The second reading is from Colossians. Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus by the will of God, and Timothy our brother, to the saints and faithful brothers and sisters in Christ in Colesberry. Grace to you and peace from God our Father. In our prayers for you we always thank God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. For we have heard of your faith in Jesus Christ, and of the love that you have for all the saints, because of the hope laid up for you in heaven. You have heard of this hope before in the word of the truth, the gospel that has come to you. Just as it is bearing fruit and growing in the whole world, so it has been bearing fruit among yourselves from the day you heard it, and truly comprehended the grace of God. This you learned from Epaphras, our beloved fellow servant. He is a faithful minister of Christ on your behalf, and he has made known to us your love in the Spirit. For this reason, since the day we heard it, we have not ceased praying for you and asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of God's will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that you may lead lives worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him as you bear fruit in every good work and as you grow in the knowledge of God, May you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power, and may you be prepared to endure everything with patience, while joyfully giving thanks to the Father, who has enabled you to share in the inheritance of the saints in the light. He has rescued us from the power of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins.
Please stand for the gospel. The gospel today comes from Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? He answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live. But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, fell into the hands of robbers who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend. So which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? He said. The one who showed him mercy, Jesus said to him. Go and do likewise. You may be seated. Our sermon today is going to be, I suppose, a report from a group of people who had a vision to want to see grace grow. And I'm not going to add any more to that and let them speak to how God spoke to them.
Good morning again, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you very much for the invitation to talk about this task force that we formed. And I will take this opportunity to explain that this is not meant to be by any means a committee meeting. This is report we're going to, it's the same, essentially the same report that we gave to the council, but we want to frame it in the spirit of worship, as part of the worship service, where our intent is not to give you every detail of what we did or the ideas that we had or anything like that. We're going to give you a brief synopsis of what we came up with in the spirit of worship. We're not going to open it to questions or anything like that. We will have the report available in the narthex when we get done, and anyone who's interested is certainly willing to take one. I have actually, Paulette and I wound up with 2 different versions of it. I have a version of it that's essentially a report to the congregation, which is a little less detailed version of it than what we gave to the council, but you can take either version if you want all the detail and what every congregant's input was or whatever. You can certainly get that one in the report to the council. Or you can just take the one that I made, which is the report to the congregation, which talks about essentially the same thing, but without some of the detail. And we will definitely be around after the service to discuss anything with you and answer any questions you might have. So our task force members are Karen and John Jernigan, Alex Gourley, who's gone this weekend, Bill Colesberry and Sharon and myself, and Pastor Sandy started out with us, and then, as we know, she went on to other things. So the task force was formed out of our desire to help Grace be a wonderful place to nourish and cultivate our church families and our visitors' walk with God. We feel there is a need to better serve our members, our friends in the community of Grace, and this is by no means meant to get in the way of the vision team process or take over the council or anything like that. It's just we're having these discussions, we have these ideas, we want to formalize them and give them to the council to think about. And that's essentially all it is. So it stems from this concern to grow the church in a variety of ways, from attendance and membership to financial growth to spiritual growth and serving our people better. And there was a phrase that we had that's actually included in the report that talks about how was it phrased? Well, we'll get to it at the end again. Yeah, when we sum it up. The objective is to provide this brief synopsis. And in a meeting with Bishop Megan last October, it was suggested by the bishop that if we don't change and try some new things, the church will be gone in 5 years. And in that meeting, we discussed the process of closing a church and what you do to go through all that. And then this amazing thing happened during that meeting where the bishop turned it all around after saying those things. It turned very promising, very upbeat, and the bishop was just full of all these great ideas of things we can do to serve our congregants and our visitors and everyone better and more in our community. And we were left there feeling much more upbeat and excited and positive about the future of this church than when it started, that's for sure. General conclusions. Let's see. A big phrase that I got out of that meeting from the bishop was he really encouraged us to go out into the world and share God's love. And it was a beautiful thing, and the way that it was said and presented was really, really inspirational. So keeping that in mind, as I mentioned at the outset, the impetus stemmed from a feeling of sink or swim. We felt like our church was on its last legs and we needed to make some drastic moves or would die. Well, we still have concerns, of course. Now we possess a much brighter outlook, and we choose to focus on the growth and the vitality as opposed to sort of a doom and gloom approach. And we propose to do as the bishop encouraged us to do, which is share God's love with the world. We came up with some major tenets that will be in the report, and I'm not going to go through them all right now, but there are two that I think are worth talking about in a worship environment. And that is that we want the church to be known for doing stuff. Examples, putting on a worship concert. The Bethlehem experience that we had. Perhaps doing a summer camp. We didn't quite get to it this summer, but we're going to get there next year with more planning and more time. An idea was a date night where maybe our church offers a babysitting service and couples, maybe even old couples, you go out on a date and have trusted, great babysitting service available right here at church. And these events should be limited in number, perhaps quarterly, but be well planned. Okay, I'm getting into the community part of it again. I don't want to do that, but that's an idea. And it's the chicken or the egg, right? So without more members, it's difficult to do more stuff. Without more stuff, it's difficult to get new members. By the way, thank you, new people, for being here today. If you're not regular attendees and members yet. So the takeaway is we need to start small and work our way up. And one way to start small, and following the bishop's encouragement, is for us all to ask people to come and join us whenever you can. And that's not always a real comfortable thing for us to do, but one of the really great ways to be able to approach that is to have something fun and specific for them to ask them to come and do. And maybe it's, come to our summer camp. Maybe it's a new musician. Please come and join us. Learn how to play some music. Maybe it's a new location. Boy, we're going to be at the park, or we're going to be at the ranch, or we're going to be somewhere that maybe that particular person, maybe it's a neighbor or whatever, has an affinity for that place. Oh man, I know you love San Lorenzo Park. We're going to be down there next week. That sort of approach. Maybe it's someone who has a lot of expertise in a particular area. Well, you're a great barbecue chef. We're having service at the ranch in a week, and we're going to have a barbecue afterwards. We could sure use a little help. Those are ideas to encourage you to ask someone to come and join us. Our Rotary Club was really stifled for a long time, and we just were not growing and not very vital and vibrant. And Suzanne Krause took over our membership committee, and she has proven that if you just ask people, all of a sudden they go, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that. No one's ever asked me to do that before. And now our Rotary Club is growing, and all kinds of things going on, and lots of new members. So our reading from Luke is one of my favorite readings in the Bible. Are you guys familiar with lawyer jokes? Right? That's one of the biggest joke genres out there, right? Lawyer jokes. And so I'm pretty sure Luke is the first documented lawyer joke ever. Because he's talking to Jesus, this lawyer's talking to Jesus. And it's about the Samaritan, right? And the guy's trying to make his way, and where's he trying to go? To Jericho. And the Samaritan, and all these people passing by and don't help him, except of course the Samaritan, who bandages his wounds, puts him on his own animal, takes him to the inn, gives him a couple denarii, so he can hang on while the guy's gone until he comes back. And then Jesus, of course, says, which of these do you think is the neighbor? And of course, it's the person, the Good Samaritan. And then Jesus says, go and do likewise. And I think, in essence, that's the mission of our task force, is for us, not only come up with these ideas and present these things, but for us to then go and do likewise. To not just be the idea people, but we're also very willing to jump out there and do this stuff, get the things going. And so in sort of honor of Luke's first lawyer joke, I got to tell you the story about the attorney who was trying to get into heaven. The fact that an attorney even made it that far is pretty unusual as far as I'm concerned. But he's up there and he's talking to St. Peter. And St. Peter's going over his paperwork, and the guy's trying to get into heaven. And St. Pete says, oh my goodness, he says, you look remarkable for a man who's 137 years old. The attorney looks at him and says, 137? What are you talking about? I died young. I'm only 62. St. Peter looks through his paper and goes, oh, I was going by your billable hours. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Karen for our next. Aren't you up next? No? Oh, who is it then?
John.
Oh, is it John?
Me?
Okay. Age before beauty then.
Thank you, Rich. I'm talking about community engagement. Let's see, was that, yeah, there it is right there. What I want to talk about are ideas of how our church can practice community engagement, and thus acting out the commandment, which we've heard just when Rich was talking there about our gospel. Love our neighbors. But we're loving our neighbors by using our facility right now. Some people would say that the world and everything in it changes every 2 to 3 years. What we just experienced or are still maybe going through is COVID-19. Some would say things have changed more like 4 to 6 years. Today, we live in a totally different world than we did 2 or 3 years ago. And it's because of COVID, and it especially has affected churches, including this church right here. We cannot make Grace look like other churches. We need to invent who we are in our setting right here, our town, and our talents. I mean, we just heard, you know, these beautiful musicians up here and amazing talents. We need to exploit that. Grace will never be the church that we once were, because the world and the people have changed. But we can become a new church with new direction, new excitement, and new community involvement. Let me be clear, partnering with groups is not intended to increase the numbers on Sundays. What it does is makes our church a safe place for the community to use. If someone wants or needs a church, they may think of Grace as a safe place to attend because they have attended here as a function that was not church related. This is not a Bible verse, and Randy may consider it to be sacrilegious that I'm going to take a very famous song and just change a few words. Buffalo Springfield did it for what it's worth. You may remember that. There's something happening here. What it ain't exactly clear. There's a church over there. Let's see what is happening over there. And that's what we want. We want to encourage people to use our facility, be here for other things, but when they do look at us, they say, well, what's going on over there? Let's go over there and find out what's happening. So, sorry, Randy, but I know. Okay. So at the same time, one of the things that we did, we met with Steve Adams, our city manager, and he talked about partnerships that both parties can benefit from those relationships. And that's both, financially, maybe possibly sharing the facility, whereas they might share some costs for cleaning or whatever. It also made me some uncomfortable things, like maybe changing maybe the layout of some of the rooms or whatever to accommodate some of those groups. Right now we have Soul Treasures has used it. We did some walkthroughs with Barbara Peckema and Jeff Hendershide, and they gave us some ideas that might help improve their usage of it. I mean, obviously Sun Street uses it, the quilt groups. Mead Memorial Hospital has done COVID shots here. We've had elections. All those things are possibilities that we can do. So one of the things that Karen and I have been doing is watching some videos which online about other churches. One of the things they do is they have things that they use during a sermon that allows you to have some sort of idea of what it is. I happen to see this, and I don't know, maybe do you have any idea what that is there? So this is what it is. You recognize that? Yeah, my grandkids found this out in the garage while they were there, and they got it out. And what's inside it? Another one, huh? Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? So there's another one in there. And then sometimes you drop it. So you have another one. And you've got another one. Must be not happening. Yes, there it is. So there we are. But the illustration of that is that we can have a building, and we can have a lot of different things that fit into that building and create something that's kind of fun to play with. And I think that if we can develop a program to use our building like that, I think it will be exciting. So anyway, the next person up is who?
Alex.
Alex Gourley, where are you?
So Alex's input into the task force had a lot to do with our outreach and our marketing, communication efforts, and it was to establish and organize an ongoing system of communicating to our members, visitors, and the general public as far as what's happening in Grace. Social media, printed materials, business cards, some are doing news releases, personal networking, referrals, signage. And how are we going to accomplish all that? The idea is possibly to hire a staff person. Maybe that person has lots of other duties. Maybe it's the manager of Grace Lutheran Church. The overall organizer. We're not sure, but we do recognize that we need to do a much better job at those things. And our marketing, community, and outreach efforts need to ramp up and be done much more consistently and better. There's talk about different ways to brand the church. And we discussed ideas about new logos, about changing the name, and maybe not the official legal name, but perhaps just using the word grace a lot more without the word Lutheran attached to it all the time. Anyway, those are some of the communication and marketing ideas that were discussed as part of this task force and are in the document and presented to the council.
One of the great things about having Alex Gourley on this task force was that he represents the younger generation. and has a lot of ideas, and that's really, we need to keep that in mind and think of how can we be friendly to young couples and young families. So I'm going to talk to you about some ideas about the Sunday worship experience that our task force is recommending. But before I do, I want to reference our gospel reading from Luke that encourages us to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. This profound message should be the foundation for everything we do at Grace. And if it is, what are some of the ways we can love God and love our neighbors in our Sunday worship experience? Let's start with preaching. Traditionally, we've paid a pastor to expound on the scriptures for the week in a 10 to 20-minute sermon. But what if we included more variety by way of video messages, guest speakers, and expanded children's sermons? I've been impressed in the last few weeks with the heartfelt messages from our own members, Anita McKean, David Phillips, Suzanne Krause, and Roger Hill. In our task force research, we visited churches that seemed to be vibrant to observe what they were doing and whether we could adapt some of those ideas to our church. One day, John and I started a Sunday morning at 6 a.m., and every 2 hours, we watched a total of 9 video sermons, 5 from Lutheran churches and 4 from other affiliations, many of which were challenging and thought-provoking. Our bishop recommended 2 books to us, one called The Post-Quarantine Church, and the other called Simple Church, that had ideas for ways small churches can access inspiring, practical preaching, even if they can't afford a full-time pastor. Regarding music, in our Colossians scripture, Paul encourages us to always give thanks to God for the faithful people surrounding us. I've attended this church for a long time, and I can honestly say that I have met some of the most talented and gifted musicians and heard some of the most meaningful worship music here. We can all be so thankful for the variety of gifts that Grace has been blessed with through the people who have walked through our doors. Our task force thinks that there are ways to expand on that by continuing to offer more variety of modern songs and inviting musicians to participate in our worship band. Because in the past few years we've lost some of our musician leaders, such as Ed and Rhonda Bastido, Joanne Masters, Frank Babb, Jeff Funtner, and Janice Phillips, perhaps it's time to consider hiring a part-time music leader to supplement our volunteers. I love leading worship, in part because it connects me to people such as Glenn, the Caseys, and Hannah, and Miguel, and Roger, but it's a big job. There are many gifted musicians in our community. John and I saw some of them when we attended the King City High School band concert. With planning, our church could be even better known for our music. Some of you know that the reason I started attending Grace was because Pastor Eugene Hanneman offered me a key to the church to come play the piano when I didn't have a piano in my home. God has long touched my heart through Christian music, and Grace has the potential for doing that more. Regarding announcements, our group is recommending that we put announcements at the end of each service, like we are experimenting with now, so as not to interrupt the flow of the worship service. Announcements are important in that they display ways we can serve and learn at Grace outside of Sunday morning. We could even consider having the worship music leader do the announcements and keep them shorter, or use more video screen messages and handouts. Regarding other locations, it appears that Grace has discovered that holding services at the Red Tail Ranch reaches new people, and that people will attend church at times other than Sunday morning. If we want to grow, there are opportunities when services are held in different places and at different times. Each Sunday that I lead the music, I print out the scripture readings for the week. Here's kind of what they look like. And I scan through these ancient words, looking for what I think God is trying to teach me, and try to be sensitive to what others may be encouraged by. Here are the things I read this week in Colossians. Pray, asking to be filled with the knowledge of God's will. Pray for spiritual wisdom. Pray for understanding. Pray that our lives will be pleasing to God in everything that we do for the future of grace. Thank you.
And I love this topic because education is exciting and it's fun and it's interesting and it's meaningful. John, could I have a slide up?
Mhm.
Matthew 18:20 says, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them." Our church has done an amazing job of organizing opportunities for people to gather and experience God. And I have a few photos up there, just times that we are having fun, just being together, and knowing that God is with us and encouraging us. Look around you, and we have an amazing group of people here that know how to get things done and are just a pleasure to be with. And I think that is such a gift. We're so lucky. Ecclesiastes 3 tells us, "For everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." Add the words,
Turn.
and most of us will recall that Ecclesiastes 3 became a song famous by, anybody know? By the Birds. I like that verse when I think about education in our church. For a season, we had some amazing youth programs, the 24-hour famine. Do you want to put that little video on?
All of you bags this year because significantness and
So this is where kids raised money and gathered food and for the hungry, while getting a glimpse of what it was like to be actually hungry. So they fasted and spent the night, and Janice and David and Roger and Cheryl and a bunch of people worked with these kids on that, and it was pretty meaningful and amazing and a lifelong lesson. And then we had the Mexico outreach for many years, and that touched so many hearts. How many of you participated in the Mexico outreach? A lot of us did, and it was truly amazing. But, Randy,
turn.
I was kind of hoping he'd sing it, but that's okay. That particular season has ended, but that doesn't mean our work is done. Our Growth and Vitality group is suggesting that a multi-generational congregation is wonderful and a goal. Can we do that? Yeah. We can kind of alternate between those two slides about how fun it is to have young people in our church. We love that. We propose that developing a step-by-step system to build back the youth program, starting small and occasional youth-oriented events, and then perhaps hire a part-time staffer to build up the program. And again, these are just suggestions that we are making to the council, rather than we're not insisting that this is how it's done. As a church, we are already reaching out to the community with the food pantry and the Women of Grace with the backpack program, and we envision doing more, including our Adopt a Road program beginning in August. I think you guys have seen the slide for that, and so please just let me know if you'd like to participate. The song Ancient Words says, "Holy words long preserved for our walk in this world. They resound with God's own heart. Oh, let the ancient words impart. Words of life, words of hope. Give us strength, help us cope. In this world, where'er we roam, ancient words will guide us home." We propose meeting in homes and restaurants and churches to learn about these ancient words. There are many great Bible studies that are already made just for purchase, and they just need a facilitator or somebody who has a passion for Bible study to organize these. This ties into fun events called pub theology. It really is a thing. Beer and hymns, again. These are things that they take place in a restaurant or a pub or a coffee shop, and it's just in a different location to learn about what God is offering us. Classes. Okay, we can go to the next. Yeah, we had a vision of offering fun things like with a Christian twist, like maybe yoga to Christian music. And Casey was very on board with teaching something like that. We could do barbecuing or painting or music. And these classes could be taught by members of the congregation or the general public. We have had a lot of fun in the past with Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and we could do that again. The Bethlehem experience was fun, and it was a great way to serve our community. We'd also like to see a class maybe called Grace 101. What's our church about, and what do we believe? How do we get involved? How do we get involved, you might ask? Well, the opportunities are endless. Your gifts are greater than you believe. So jump in when you can and enjoy God being in our midst.
So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today is the building and the property. And John kind of alluded to this earlier, that we need to embrace whatever we can to, if we partner with these other groups, to make the space as flexible as it can be. I don't really think that's a problem for this church, because before we had the flood in the basement, we used to be able to partition the basement off. And then when we refurbished the basement after the flood, nobody said, well, where are the walls? How come they're not there? The nursery used to be downstairs, and now it's upstairs. The pastor's office and the secretary office got switched. And I don't see lots of people coming to the council meeting going, you can't do that. It's always been the other way. You can't change. And so I think we can change, and I think we need to keep that in mind as we go forward and perhaps partner with some of these different groups, that just because it's the way it is doesn't mean the way it has to be. And this is God's house, and we still need to maintain it and take care of it. And in being vital and growing, you want to drive by and see the lawn's mowed and the paint's painted and those kinds of things, because it represents who we are. And going through of all this and coming up with all these ideas, and as we've kind of said, this is not a mandate or a list that we're just going to start checking them off. But the idea with this task force to go is, what can we do different? How can we make it better? And then present that to the council to have them go through these various sections that we had up there and go, we really like this one not so much. Because the council really manages the day-to-day part of the church. When's Christmas coming? What are the readings? What are we going to do? When's the service going to be? Is it going to be one service or two services? Is it 5:30 or 7:30? And so they get bogged down a little bit in the just running of the church. And so this was an idea for us to go, we don't have to worry about all of that stuff. We can just sit around, and we had some great soup suppers of our own and just threw out all these ideas. And so eventually it comes down to, well, how do you fund all this? If we've had a reduction in the number of people that come, so how do you start growing this and funding this while you're waiting for these people who are experiencing coming to a play at the church that's put on by Soul Treasures, and now they feel comfortable with the building, and well, I know where the bathroom is there, and I know where the kitchen is there, so I'm pretty comfortable with that building, and I know where the church part of it is too, it's upstairs. And so to do that, we thought, well, what we need to do is not be afraid of looking at the parsonage. That perhaps the parsonage is an idea from a different era. As John alluded, we kind of changed over COVID. We change all the time. And so is having a house for a pastor really something that's an idea from a different era? And if it is, then we have the resource. We tithed ourselves over the years to build up that value that's in that home. And we could use that value to start doing some of these projects. And again, these are just ideas that we present to the council for them to digest and go, come tell us more about this idea. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you all about today. Wrap us up.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll attempt to frame this back into a spirit of worship and conclude by saying we have all these ideas, and it's just our group, and we presented them to the council, and we're ready to work on anything, just like most of you are, or all of you are, no differently. That we're all ready to jump in and work on what we need to work on to make this place just a healthy, happy, vital, growing place for our family, our church family. And to do as the bishop suggests and get out there and share our God with everyone. And we don't need to do these things so we have more members, or it's so we have more money, or more attendance. Ultimately, we don't need to serve more people. We need to serve people more. And that's our whole community. A quote from today's reading is may you be made strong. This is from the Colossians reading. May you be made strong with all the strength that comes from his glorious power. And may you be prepared to endure everything with patience. I think we're doing that. While joyfully giving thanks to the Father. And I sure felt that way today. I think we're doing that. The Father who has enabled us, you, to share in the inheritance of the saints in the light. He's rescued us from the power of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption. Thank you guys very much for listening to our presentation.
Thank you, Rich.
I want to, I don't know if you know, I am the council president, congregation president, and I just want to tell you that when the proposal of this task force came to the council, we had a big sigh of relief, because this, to us, this is our job. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to come up with these ideas to grow. And frankly, we're all crazy busy. And to have 6 active church members, longtime church members, propose to us that they would like to get together and do this for us, we're truly excited, and we really appreciate all they've done. And when they gave the report to the council a couple of months ago, actually it was fun. We were all excited about all the ideas and how they had researched everything, and we just want to thank them. Thank everybody for all their efforts. And I just want to make a clarification when Rich sort of mentioned, dying churches. This is statewide, worldwide. The bishop told us 60% of the congregations in our synod, maybe it's 150, were in transition. So we were just one of that many. And I like to believe things happen for a reason. 2 years of COVID, other than the fact that too many people were lost, I always see there's a reason. So I think it was like a reboot, and we're back, and we're just going to reboot and do it differently and come up with new ideas. So the council will not let this sit on a shelf. Some of the things have already happened, and all of this work will not go on the back burner. We will work on it as time permits, and we appreciate all the work. So we're going to grow in grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Paulette. Our sermon song is called In Your Hands. It's new to some of you. If you have never heard it before, just absorb it. But ultimately, the future of our church is in God's hands. And if we trust that, He's got some amazing plans for us, just as He has for the last 60 years. So if you come to the part where it says, in your hands, I leave it in your hands, feel free to sing that. Join in anywhere that you feel comfortable.
What we do next is prayers, and I'll just highlight in that prayers to me is being honest with God, saying what's in our hearts, what we feel, what we're uncertain about, our joys, tribulations, everything. And God wants to hear from us all the time. It doesn't have to be sitting in a church. It can just be walking down the street and just talking to Him. If you deal with a lot of people passing by, it might be a questionable thing, but it's all right. Because then maybe they'll ask and you can say, I'm talking to God. I'm talking to my Father, I'm talking to my Savior, I'm talking to my Lord, I'm talking to my friend. And I think that's what God wants from us, is to be His friend, if nothing else. So let us begin with our prayers, our talk to our Father. Lord, it's time to be honest with you in that changes on the horizon for not only us and our church, but for the world. I think at times we felt a comfort when things were normal. I remember back watching old Andy Griffith reruns of Mayberry and thinking, wow, what a life that would be, just to know your neighbors, know everybody in your community, have no fears. The world was a peaceful place. But things change. And we're not, what's the word? We're not alienated by our thoughts that think that life is supposed to be easy and things are supposed to go our way as we think. Because it wasn't easy for you. And we just ask that we take bold steps and change for you in the directions you want us to go. It's scary. It's uncomfortable. It's positions that we don't like to be in. But you were bold. You have always been bold. Allow us to mimic that, be more like you, and take chances. Let us be honest with ourselves. Let's be honest with others. If nothing else, just being who we are, admitting to who we are, breaks down those walls and allow us to do that. In our lives, we come across people that mean so much to us. You have the 12 disciples, we have our friends, and our families, and our world. And we realize that hurt is part of that. Along with hurt is joyful and rejoicing. So in our prayers, not only shall we, do you want to hear avenues of please help others, but also I think you want to hear from our delights and our joys and our thanksgivings. So as we offer prayers to you today, we're just talking to you. Allow us to be grateful also for the things that you've given us. Thank you for listening to our prayers this morning toward you. And thank you for giving us a sample of how we can talk to you through our Lord's Prayer, which says, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And lead us not into temptation,
but deliver us from evil.
for thine is the kingdom,
And the power, and the glory,
forever.
forever and ever. Amen. Lita, do we have announcements?
Couple. you've not done so already, please fill in the sign-in sheet and turn it into an usher at the end of the service. Thank you, that helps us with planning. Also, we have snacks downstairs, so please join us downstairs after church for a time of fellowship and food. The backpack project is in full swing. There's a box out there for you to put items if you want to buy items for our backpacks, or there are donation envelopes with a list, and inside the envelopes are a list of items that we need. We're planning to load the backpacks on August 1st at 5 p.m. right here at church, and anybody and everybody is welcome to come join us to load the backpacks and get them turned over to the Foster Parent Association for children in need. A reminder, next week we will be meeting here for church, even though it's the third Sunday. Here for church next week, regular time. The week after that is the 24th, and the 24th we will be at the Red Tail Ranch. That will be a pop-up. So please join us for a time of fellowship after church there as well. And since it's a genuine potluck, you can bring what you want. I don't know what the main dish will be yet. So we hope you can join us.
Thank you. Please stand for our closing song, which is entitled Dedication.